Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to SleepyToons. You are a special part of this cozy little family. And tonight, you're right where you need to be. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, what time is it where you are? Where in the world are you watching from? It's always lovely to see how far this peaceful community reaches. Tonight is not about getting everything done. It's not about being perfect. It's not even about understanding every word. It's just about letting go, one breath at a time. So find your softest pillow, pull up the warmest blanket, and get cozy. The world outside can wait. Right now, you're safe. Imagine you're in a little farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. The windmill turns slowly outside. The stars are blinking sleepily above you, and Courage is curled up at your feet. His soft pink ears twitch once, then go still. He's already dozing off. Maybe you are too. You hear the gentle creak of Muriel's rocking chair, a teacup resting beside her untouched. She's humming something, a tune you don't remember, but somehow you've always known. The floor beneath you is warm. The air smells like vanilla and maybe something baked earlier. There's no rush, no danger, no noise. Just the sound of the wind brushing the window. Just the sound of you breathing. Inhale, nice and slow. Hold it gently. Exhale, even slower. Like the air itself is fallen asleep. The stories will begin soon. But for now, just let your body soften. Let your thoughts slow down. You've been strong all day. This is your time to rest. In a few minutes, we'll return to Courage's world, back to dusty roads, strange creatures, and that crooked little house in the middle of nowhere. But first, let's just be still. Let's drift just a little further now. Deeper into that quiet place where memories feel like dreams. Can you feel the air? It's softer here, like the sky is tucking you in. Maybe you remember it. A crooked house in the middle of nowhere. The lonely windmill that spins, even when there's no wind. The porch swing creaks, not from someone sitting on it, but from the weight of time itself. Courage is fast asleep now. Curled in a circle, his tail wrapped over his nose. He lets out a tiny sigh, like all his worry has finally disappeared. You're lying on the living room rug. It's old and soft, and smells faintly like cinnamon and dust. Muriel is nearby humming again, slowly threading yarn through a half-finished quilt. She glances at you with a warm smile, doesn't say anything. She knows you're already fading. Eustace is asleep too, snoring from his armchair, hat over his eyes, newspaper gently rising and falling with his chest. Outside, the wind makes stories of its own, brushing past the fence, lifting tiny swirls of sand, whispering to the moon. Every now and then, the house creaks, but not from fear, just from age. Just from memory. Do you remember that feeling when the world felt strange, but somehow still safe? That's where we are now. Not quite awake. Not quite dreaming. Just floating. Let your body melt into the mattress. Let the thoughts leave like shadows at sunset. You found shelter in nowhere. And tonight, nothing will chase you. In a few more moments, we'll step gently into the stories, into that haunting, whimsical world where Courage lives. But there's no need to rush. Right now, you're exactly where you need to be. Let your breath rise and fall, like the slow rocking of Muriel's chair. Let your eyes blink heavy, like clouds over a sleepy moon. And let your thoughts become quiet footsteps down a hallway you've walked before in dreams. The door to nowhere is opening slowly. The stories are coming. But first, let's just breathe. The walls of the house in Nowhere don't feel like walls anymore. They feel like warm breath, like the skin of a memory stretching out to hold you. In the corner, a radio plays something old, a tune you don't recognize, but somehow it fills the room with comfort. No lyrics, just soft crackles and hums, like courage humming in his sleep. A shadow passes the window. But you don't feel fear. Not tonight. You know it's just a leftover dream, something that used to scare you. But now it only floats by like a moth circling a lamp. The floor creaks again. Not under footsteps, but under dreams. The kind of dreams that courage has after a long, long day. There's something special about this house. It feels haunted, but also holy. As if each creaky board remembers you. As if the windmill outside is waiting for you to drift before it starts spinning again. Eustace stirs once in his chair, snorts lightly, and goes still. The TV plays static, but not harsh. Gentle static, like waves on a very far-away beach. Muriel sets her knitting down, folds the quilt, walks to the kitchen without a sound. Maybe to make a cup of tea. Maybe to check the stars. Outside, a familiar whisper calls, "Return the slab." But in this version, it's not a curse. It's just the wind's way of saying goodnight. Courage twitches slightly in his sleep. Maybe he's dreaming of you. Maybe he's dreaming of peace. Of a day when nothing strange came knocking. The stars above the house seem closer now. Like they've bent just for you. One twinkles like an old lamp in the attic. Another blinks, like Courage's eye, just before he smiles. And now, your breath slows. Your limbs get heavier. Not tired. Safe. Held. You've come far, friend. From wherever your day began. From whatever chased you, or worried you, or hurt you. None of that lives here. In Nowhere. Even the wind gets sleepy. Even shadows take naps. Even fear falls quiet. You're almost ready now. Almost ready to enter the full story. But not yet. Let's stay here just a little longer. Between sleep and memory. Between the floorboards and the stars. You've done well to be here. To lie down. To give yourself the gift of rest. That's no small thing. In a world that rushes, you chose to pause. And that's something Courage would admire, even if he'd shake a little while saying it. The wind has slowed. The stars are still. The farmhouse has dimmed its lights. You can almost hear it now, the creaky door opening to the next story. Just like in those late-night Cartoon Network marathons, where you sat with your knees tucked up, remote in hand, heart full of wonder. Do you remember the first time you saw Courage? That odd little pink dog, always afraid but always trying. That weird, lonely world of nowhere that somehow felt like home. The monsters were strange, the music eerie, the colors faded. But it made you feel something. And tonight, it will again. Except this time, you're not watching it with wide, excited eyes. You're listening, with tired ones, letting the story unfold slowly, letting it carry you gently, calmly into sleep. The floor doesn't creak anymore. The windmill has stopped turning. Courage is breathing in a slow, even rhythm. Muriel has dimmed the lamp. Eustace, still snoring in his chair, shifts slightly, then goes quiet. You've found it now, the perfect edge of sleep. Not quite dreaming, not quite awake. So, when the story begins, let it wash over you. Don't try to follow every detail. Let it be like a tide coming and going, leaving you more relaxed with every wave. You're safe now. You're home. You're in nowhere, and somehow you've never felt more held. Okay, so let the first tale of tonight begin. Tonight we return to nowhere, where even mattresses can hold secrets. The wind has settled, the stars are out, and Courage is just starting to doze off on the living room floor. His ears flick slightly with every creak in the house, but it's nothing new. Just another night, and nowhere. The tale begins with Muriel, sweet Muriel, deciding she's tired of her old mattress. It squeaks when she rolls over. It pokes her in the back. And most of all, she says it just doesn't feel right anymore. Oh, Courage, I do believe it's time we get ourselves a new bed, dear. Courage blinks sleepily, tail thumping once. He doesn't say much, just a soft whimper. You feel his hesitation, because nothing is ever that simple in nowhere. Eustace, of course, grumbles in the background, rocking in his chair, grumbling about how mattresses aren't what they used to be. He doesn't like change, and he especially doesn't like spending money. Still, Muriel insists, and when Muriel insists, even the shadows make way. A few days pass. The wind carries in a strange smell. The clouds hang lower than usual, and then it arrives. A mattress, delivered by a stranger whose face Courage can't quite remember. Was he tall? Was he smiling? Was he even real? Muriel's overjoyed. She places it carefully on her bed, fluffing pillows, smoothing sheets, humming all the while. The moment her head touches the pillow, something shifts. Not outside, but deep within the mattress. Courage notices first. He always does. The faint rumble. The soft whisper in a voice not quite Muriel's. He tilts his head. His ears twitch. He approaches the mattress. And then it growls. Not a big growl. Not yet. Just enough to raise goosebumps. Just enough to make Courage whimper and back away slowly, his tail tucked beneath him. But Muriel doesn't notice. She's already asleep. That night, the house grows colder. The walls sweat. The windows fog. The moon looks nervous. Courage paces the hallway, up and down, checking on Muriel, watching the mattress. It pulses. Once. Like it's breathing. When morning comes, Muriel isn't quite the same. Her eyes are darker, her voice lower. She hums, but the melody is all like a record playing backward. She makes breakfast, but instead of eggs and toast, it's something red and glowing and bubbling. Eustace doesn't notice. He never does. Courage, however, begins to shake. He tiptoes into the room later that day just to peek at the mattress. But it's no longer a mattress. It's something else now. It has corners that don't end. It has shadows where there should be springs, and it watches him. Courage runs, down the hall, into the barn, past the windmill, anywhere that isn't here. But no matter how far he goes, he can still hear the growling, like it's inside him now. And that's how the night falls, with a house full of silence, a possessed Muriel, and a mattress that breathes. Courage knows what he must do. He can't sleep. He can't blink. He must protect her. But how do you save someone from their bed? And so ends the first 30 minutes. The story is just unfolding, dreamlike, eerie, and soft around the edges. The wind returned, but not outside. It swirls in the hallway, a breeze that smells like burning candles and forgotten nightmares. Courage steps forward slowly, paws light on the floorboards. The hallway feels longer than usual. The house, stretched. In the bedroom, Muriel sits upright in bed, eyes wide open, but unblinking. She's staring at the wall, not saying a word, not moving. Her hands rest calmly on the blanket, but they aren't hers anymore. They look different. Thinner, older, paler. Courage swallows. Softly pads up to her bedside. He whispers her name. Muriel? But there's no reply. Only a low growl, not from her lips, but from the mattress beneath. The sheets rise, then fall, like something is shifting underneath them. Courage reaches for the blanket, but as soon as he touches it, a cold breeze blasts through the room. Not wind, not air. Something else. The lamp flickers. The shadows deepen. Muriel blinks once, but it's slow, mechanical. Courage backs away, then bolts into the kitchen. He's trembling, but his eyes are fierce. He must save her. In the kitchen, everything is wrong. The dishes are rearranged into spirals. The fridge is humming a lullaby, and there are claw marks in the butter. He opens a drawer, hoping for answers. Instead, he finds a garlic clove, a spoon, a recipe written in a language no one speaks anymore, and a tiny book titled How to Expel Demons from Furniture. He flips through it. Pages crumble like old leaves. But they're page 13. To remove a mattress demon, one must face it head-on, without fear, without sleep, without blinking. Courage gulps. He sets the book down, takes a deep breath, and marches to the basement. There's something down there, he remembers. An old vacuum. One that has sucked up many strange things in its day. It groans when he switches it on. Dust puffs out. The light flickers. Courage straps it to his back. He's ready. As ready as he'll ever be. The house moans softly, like it knows what's coming. The wallpaper peels a little. The floorboards creak in sympathy, and the windmill outside begins to turn. Slowly, deliberately, he enters the bedroom again, this time stronger, determined. Muriel is hovering slightly above the bed now. The mattress is split open in the center. A glow pulses from within. A voice whispers from the core. She's mine now. Courage narrows his eyes, grips the vacuum hose, takes a step forward. The mattress trembles. He places the hose near the glow, flicks the switch. It roars. The mattress howls. A windstorm erupts in the bedroom. Curtains fly, books scatter. Pictures fall from the walls. Courage holds steady. The suction pulls at the sheets, the shadows, the whispers. It pulls the demon out bit by bit, like fog being peeled from a mirror. Muriel drops back onto the bed with a soft oof. She blinks. Once. Twice. Courage? I must have dozed off. The mattress is silent now, still, empty. Eustace snores on in the other room, unbothered, unmoved, useless as ever. Courage powers off the vacuum, slumps into the hallway. His tail flicks once, and he sighs, softly, gratefully. Outside, the sky is clear. Stars twinkle brighter. And for just a moment, everything in nowhere is peaceful again. The windmill slows. The sky above nowhere glows, a little softer now. Courage steps outside. The stars are blinking like fireflies, the kind you remember from childhood, ones that felt like magic in your hands. He looks up at the sky, his floppy ears brushing the cool night air. He's tired, but not afraid anymore. Muriel is resting peacefully in her bed, the old quilt tucked neatly over her. She's snoring ever so lightly safe, warm, and completely herself again. The mattress, thrown outside, leaning against the fence, silent, empty. Just an object now, nothing more. The demon is gone. Courage curls up by the fireplace, paws tucked beneath him, tail wrapped close. The glow of the fire flickers across the wooden walls, Outside, the wind hums a lullaby, a song only courage seems to understand. Eustace is still asleep in his chair, hat over his face, mouth open, one slipper off, completely unaware of what just happened. But that's okay. He always wakes up the same way anyway. Muriel stirs once. In her sleep, she smiles. Maybe she remembers courage saving her just a little. Maybe not. But he doesn't need credit. He never has. He just wants them to be safe. You feel your breath slowing now, too. Just like Courage's. Soft, slow, steady. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw unclenches. The world fades a little further behind. Outside, the clouds drift past the moon, casting soft shadows over the dry, open plains. No monsters tonight, no demons, no echoes. Just the stillness of safety, of rest. Courage twitches slightly in his sleep. Maybe he's dreaming of Muriel's hugs, or the taste of a warm biscuit, or chasing butterflies that turn into stars. Whatever it is, it's a good dream, you can tell. You're safe here, too. In this house, in this quiet, sleepy corner of nowhere. Whatever chased you today, whatever thoughts or fears or noise, it doesn't belong here. You've left it at the edge of town, where the cactus grows, where the shadows can't find you anymore. The TV glows a soft blue behind Eustace, not showing anything, just dancing static, soft, gentle, almost like ocean waves. Muriel whispers in her sleep, something like, "Thank you, Courage." He lifts one ear and smiles. Just a little. The wind picks up, but is not scary. It carries the scent of warm tea, baking bread, and old cartoons at midnight. You feel yourself fading now. Not away, but into something softer. Into the memory of comfort, of curiosity, of being small, but brave. And if a mattress ever growls again, you'll know. You'll know Courage is out there. Ears alert, heart pounding, ready to protect. Even if he's scared. Even if he shakes, even if he doesn't know how, he'll try every time. So rest now. Let your limbs grow heavy and let the stars tuck you in. Let the silence be your lullaby. You're not alone in nowhere. Not tonight. Let's begin our second tale of today. The night in nowhere is cold. But not the kind of cold that bites your skin. It's the kind that slips beneath your clothes, through the floorboards, and into the soul of the house itself. Courage shivers. Not from fear, not yet. Just from the kind of cold that feels like something is missing. Outside, the windmill creaks slowly. The sky hangs heavy. No stars tonight. No moon. Just a deep purple blanket of silence. Inside the farmhouse, Eustace snores as usual, hat falling sideways over his face. Muriel rocks in her chair. She hums softly, a little lullaby she always sings when it's stormy. But tonight there is no storm. Just silence. Suddenly, the radio clicks on by itself. A crackling voice whispers. The soil is angry. Courage jumps. The hairs on his back rise. He looks around, the radio is off again. Silent. Still. He tiptoes through the living room. The shadows seem longer than usual. The walls are breathing. Very slowly. In and out. The house isn't quite right. Outside, the cornfield rustles. But there's no wind. Only movement. Slow, creeping, unintentional. Courage peers out the window. His reflection blinks back at him. And then it doesn't. Muriel yawns, stretches, and tells Eustace she's going to bed. Come along, Courage, she says with a soft smile. He follows. But his eyes don't leave the window, not for a second. That night, the temperature drops even lower. The bed feels like stone. The blankets don't help. The floorboards groan like they're in pain. Courage lies at the foot of the bed, curled up tight, eyes twitching, at every creak. At exactly 3 a.m., the lights flicker. The wallpaper curls at the edges. And from deep beneath the floorboards, a voice echoes. "You have disrespected this land." Muriel stirs in her sleep. Courage climbs onto her chest gently. He places a paw on her shoulder. She doesn't wake, but her brow furrows, like she's dreaming something heavy. Suddenly, the floorboards beneath the bed crack. A burst of cold air rushes out. Courage barks, but no sound comes out. He leaps off the bed, and the entire bedroom tilts. Just slightly, but enough. Like the house itself is shifting. He rushes to the living room. Everything is different. The TV is showing a cornfield, but it's not turned on. The fireplace is lit, but there are no logs. And the chair Eustace was sleeping in is empty. Courage gulps, takes a slow step forward. The flames flicker. A voice booms from the hearth. "The harvest has been ignored. The land has been forgotten. Payment is due." A face begins to form in the fire. It's long, angular, eyes of smoke, lips of glowing coal. Courage whimpers, presses against the wall. The face leans forward. "You have one night to honor the land, or lose everything built upon it." The fire vanishes. The cold returns. Muriel walks in, rubbing her eyes. "Courage? Is everything all right?" He looks up at her, shaking. How could he explain? That the earth is angry? That their home, the only home he's ever known, is about to be taken away? She pats him on the head, still groggy, still warm. "Let's go back to bed, dear." Courage watches the fireplace. It doesn't move, no sound, just the crackle of memory. He knows what must be done. The sun won't rise unless he saves it. Unless he saves them. Again. The night has grown even darker. And in Nowhere, the quiet is never just silence. It's a waiting breath. It's the echo of something old. Courage walks alone through the hallway. His paws leave soft prints on the wooden floor. The walls groan with each step. The doors whisper. Outside, the cornfield glows. A strange bluish light pulses between the stalks, almost like the heartbeat of the land itself. Muriel is back in bed and sound asleep. Eustace, now found again, is snoring with his hat pulled low. He doesn't believe a word of Courage's panic. "Bah, just a bad potato," he muttered earlier. "Ghosts don't know nothing about farming." Courage knows better. He heads outside. The cold greets him like an old friend. The corn rustles again, but it isn't the wind. It moves with purpose, parting before him, inviting him in. He tiptoes into the rows. Everything smells of dirt and roots. The air tastes metallic. A single scarecrow stands in the center of the field. But tonight it looks different. Its arms are twisted upward. Its head tilts in a knowing way. Its eyes glowing empty holes. Courage inches closer. A voice, soft as leaves, speaks from behind it. "Why do you protect those who ignore the earth?" Courage looks around, wide-eyed. Another voice, deeper now, echoes from below. "They do not plant. They do not water. They do not respect." Suddenly the ground trembles, only slightly, but enough to make the stalk shiver. The face from the fireplace rises again, this time from the soil. Its voice booms like thunder trapped in a bottle. "You have until sunrise." Then vanishes again, leaving behind a single glowing seed. Courage carefully picks up the seed. It's warm. It pulses in his paw, like it knows it doesn't belong here. He races back toward the house. In the kitchen, Muriel stirs oatmeal. She doesn't ask where he was. She just gives him a soft smile. "You always look so serious when the moon is full, Courage." He places the glowing seed on the table. Muriel raises an eyebrow, then nods. Best plant it, then. They walk together to the garden patch out back. It hasn't been touched in years, dry, cracked, forgotten. Muriel bends down, loosening the earth with her hands. Courage plants the seed. The moment it touches the soil, a hum rises. Not loud, not scary, just peaceful. The cornfield stops rustling. The air warms slightly. Even the clouds above seem to part. But it's not over yet. From the sky descends a glowing clock. Its hands are spinning. Then slowly, they stop. Frozen at 4:44 a.m. A voice speaks. One final task remains. Courage tilts his head. Suddenly the scarecrow moves. It steps forward from its post, lumbering, slow, silent. Muriel blinks. Well, that's new. The scarecrow speaks. Will you give up what you value most to make things right? Eustace stumbles outside in his robe, yelling, You again? I ain't giving up nothing. This is my land. The scarecrow tilts its head. Then your land shall vanish. Courage places himself between Eustace and the scarecrow. He trembles but stands tall. The seed glows behind him in the earth. A tiny sprout begins to rise, glowing blue. Courage doesn't speak, but he doesn't move either. The scarecrow looks at him, then nods. The windmill turns once. The field glows, and the ground settles. Back inside, Muriel warms some tea. The house sighs, not with pain, but relief. The clock outside melts away into stardust. The scarecrow returns to stillness, and the cornfield breathes. Courage curls beside Muriel's chair. The world, for now, is at peace again. The house is still again. The night hangs like velvet outside, and a pale purple glow rests over the cornfield. It's as if the earth has forgiven, for now. Inside, Muriel hums softly. She rocks in her chair, knitting something Courage can't quite see. A sweater? A memory? The teapot whistles low and slow. Steam curls like sleepy ghosts. Eustace snores nearby, still mumbling in his dreams about taxes and tractors, completely unaware that his house was nearly swallowed by the land itself. Courage is curled on the rug. His breathing is steady, eyes heavy. But he stays awake, just a little longer. The windmill turns gently, its creaks sounding more like lullabies than warnings tonight. The clock above the fireplace ticks peacefully again. No more strange lights, no more voices from the floor, no more glowing seeds. Just warmth. Muriel finishes her knitting. She lays it over Courage, a tiny, cozy blanket. You've earned it, dear, she whispers. He blinks slowly. His tail thumps once, and he drifts, just a little. Outside, the corn sways, not in fear, but in rhythm, as if it's dancing to the music of the stars. The scarecrow remains still, but it doesn't feel so scary anymore, just protective, like it's watching over the land now, and maybe even over Courage. In his dream, Courage is flying, not running, not hiding, just floating through a sky made of pillow clouds and glowing windmills. Muriel floats beside him. So does a giant teacup. Eustace is yelling from a tractor made of toast. It's nonsense, but it's peace. Back in the waking world, Courage twitches slightly. A little snore escapes his nose. Muriel smiles, adjusts the blanket over him, and turns off the lamp. The house breathes. Yes, actually breathes, but not in fear, in comfort. The floorboards hum quietly. The walls glow just faintly from moonlight. This house, odd, broken, haunted, has seen much. But tonight, it is simply home. And you, listener, are safe here too. You're curled beside Courage, wrapped in quiet, surrounded by stars. Whatever the world asked of you today, you've done enough. Whatever noise followed you into the night, it's fallen silent now. Here in nowhere, you are not alone. So let go. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts melt like the glowing clock. Let the warmth of Muriel's blanket wrap around your heart. Tomorrow can wait. Morning will come. But for now, let this dream hold you. Courage is here. The windmill is turning, and you are home. Let's begin our third tale of tonight. The stars shimmer faintly over the nowhere sky, and all is still. The farmhouse sleeps almost. Courage peeks from beneath a cozy blanket, his ears twitching to the soft creaks of the house, those usual familiar creaks. But tonight, something itches at the edge of the dark, something crawling, something stubborn. Eustace is groaning, tossing, turning. His foot is twitching oddly. More than just a dream, more than a cramp. He throws off his blanket, annoyed. "Dumb foot, stupid thing." Muriel calls gently from her room. "Try some cream, dear." Eustace huffs and stomps into the bathroom. Courage, already suspicious, tiptoes behind. There's something off. The foot, it's not just infected. It seems to have a mind of its own. Eustace applies some cream, but the foot growls. Courage gasps quietly. The next morning, Eustace's foot has grown, big, purple, throbbing, and it speaks. "We run this joint now." Courage faints. The foot begins barking orders at Muriel. "Give me a sandwich, Granny?" Eustace doesn't even notice he's been completely taken over, his voice, his tone, his walk all controlled. Courage peeks through a cracked door. The living room now resembles a gangster's lair. Newspapers stacked, radio blaring old jazz, and Eustace possessed, sitting like a mob boss, his foot propped up like royalty. "Bring me the cash, see?" the foot snarls. Muriel, ever gentle, just pats Courage's head and whispers, "Don't worry, dear. You always figure it out." Night falls. Courage hides under the kitchen table. He listens to Eustace talk to other feet. Yes. Somehow, across the radio waves, a whole gang of infected feet communicate. They're planning something. A robbery. Of the farmhouse. We grab the silverware, loot the pantry, and bounce. Muriel continues baking cookies as if nothing unusual is happening. The house is now a safe house. The infected Eustace sleeps on the couch, snoring and mumbling mob slang. Courage creeps around the edges. He finds clues. Bandages left unused. A strange glowing spore in the bath. A cigar butt near the fridge. From a foot. Later that night, Courage sneaks into the attic. He flips through old books. One page glows faintly. The clutching foot, a parasite of power, infects the lazy and feeds off obedience. It can only be removed by draining its ego. Courage nods with resolve. He knows what he must do. But that is a plan for tomorrow. Tonight he curls up beside Muriel's chair, the fire crackling, and dreams of foot cream and heroic endings. The farmhouse sleeps under a foggy moon. Outside, the cornfield doesn't move. Not even the wind wants to disturb tonight's silence. But inside, the living room has turned into a full-fledged gangster hideout. Jazz plays low on the record player. There's a smell of stale pickles and dusty socks. And Eustace? He's not Eustace anymore. "We're going to knock off that pawn shop in the next town over," the foot says. Yes, the foot says it. Because it's in charge now. Eustace's body slumps in the armchair, arms limp. The foot twitches with power, cigar in its toes. Dark sunglasses over. Well, nothing. Courage watches from under the stairs. He's wrapped in Muriel's old quilt, clutching a flashlight that barely works. his ears twitching with every footstep. Or rather, every footstep. He remembers the book. To defeat the clutching foot, you must insult it into shrinking. But how do you insult a gangster foot without getting kicked into next week? Courage tiptoes into the hallway. He sets up a trap, his version of a comedy club. A single spotlight, a microphone made from a spoon, and cue cards that say, foot jokes. Later that night, Courage wheels in a fake stage right in front of the recliner. Eustace the foot opens one eye. What's this? Courage clears his throat, trembling. Why did the foot go to school? To become a toe-tally bad student. Silence. Then a twitch. The foot snorts. Huh, that's terrible. But Courage sees it. The swelling shrinks just a little. He continues. What do you call a foot with no friends? A sole loser. The foot stifles a laugh. Muriel walks in, holding tea. Oh my, is it comedy night? The foot huffs. Shut up, Granny. But Muriel just sets down a tray of cookies and sits beside Courage. He's doing very well, dear. Courage continues his sleepy stand-up routine. With each terrible pun, each toe-tally, groan-worthy joke, the foot shrinks. The gangster voice becomes squeakier. The sunglasses fall off, and the cigar rolls to the floor. You know you're washed up, Courage says gently, when a pink dog and a cookie take you down. The foot twitches, once, twice. Then, poof, it deflates. Eustace sits up, blinks. What happened? Where's my hat? Courage hugs Muriel in relief. The record player stops. The fog outside lifts, and all is right again and nowhere. That night, Courage nestles in his usual spot. Muriel knits a tiny sock for no reason. Eustace grumbles about not remembering anything as usual. Outside, the cornfield whispers quietly. And inside, everyone sleeps. Even the house. Even the leftover foot cream. You, dear listener, breathe deeply now. The foot is gone. The night is calm, and your thoughts are as light as Muriel's cookies. The night has quieted completely. The farmhouse glows softly under the starlight. A single breeze moves the curtains. The record player is still. The smell of oatmeal cookies lingers in the air. Eustace snores from the armchair, hat back on, mouth wide open. His foot, wrapped in a cozy bandage, resting peacefully, no longer a muttering mob slang. Muriel hums a gentle lullaby from the kitchen as she finishes cleaning up Courage's little comedy stage. Courage sits on the floor, eyes heavy. There are no more growling feet, no cigar smoke, no bizarre gangster plans. Just the creak of the old farmhouse, the crackle of the fire, and the comforting rhythm of normal. Outside, the moon rises higher. It paints everything silver. Even the cornfield seems to sigh. Courage pads toward the back porch. He looks out into the stillness. No shadows, no whispers. Just night. Beautiful, simple night. He stretches, yawns, then curls up on a folded towel left beside the door. Muriel gently opens the screen. There you are, dear, she says, draping a little blanket over him. You've had quite a night, haven't you? She sits beside him, tea in hand. They watch the stars together. Courage breathes deeply. His tail wags just once, slow and lazy. He's not scared now. Not tired in the panicked way. Just sleepy. Safe. Content. A shooting star drifts across the sky. Muriel points to it. Make a wish. Courage closes his eyes. But he doesn't need to wish. Everything is perfect. Inside, the house dims. The lights flicker off. The warmth of the day fades into soft shadows and slow dreams. Eustace mutters something about toe tacks and turns over. Even his grumpiness seems lighter tonight. Courage finally stands up, walks to his usual spot by Muriel's rocking chair, and curls into a donut. Muriel turns the chair gently. The squeak of its rock sounds like a lullaby. The fireplace pops softly. Somewhere a kettle lets out a long sigh of steam. You, dear listener, are here too. You're in this farmhouse, not a scary one, not haunted, but calm, safe, wrapped in Courage's world where the brave ones still shake, but they show up anyway. Whatever has clung to your heart today like the clutching foot has no hold on you now. Let it go. Let the cozy rhythm of this home hold you. Let your body sink. Let your breath slow. Let the night carry you. The windmill outside turns slowly. The stars blink above. Courage snores a soft snore. The foot is gone. The fear is gone. Only peace remains. You've done enough. You are safe. You are home. Now, let's begin our fourth tale of tonight. A tale that wanders into the heart of a stormy night and into the soul of someone who only ever wanted to be seen and maybe even loved. It was one of those evenings in nowhere where the sky felt heavy, full of deep blue clouds curling like ocean waves above the farmhouse. The air was thick with the scent of distant thunder, and every now and then a quiet roll of it hummed across the wide desert. Inside the cozy little farmhouse, warm golden light flickered from old lamps, casting gentle shadows across the wooden floorboards. Courage, the small pink dog with the biggest heart, sat curled beside his favorite spot near the old radiator. It clicked softly with warmth as the storm whispered against the windows. Outside, raindrops began tapping, soft at first, then faster, like 1,000 tiny fingers asking to be let in. He tilted his head, ears perked. He heard it, not thunder, not wind, a new sound. A knock? No, softer. A shuffle. A lonely shuffle. Outside the house, barely visible, in the rain's silver curtain, stood a figure, hunched, cloaked, soaked in sorrow. The kind of figure that stories forget, the people look past without seeing. A hunchback, wearing a long cloak, patched and old, with a wide-brimmed hat that drooped under the weight of the rain. He stood by the barn, seeking shelter, not wanting to disturb anyone, just to be somewhere warm. Courage saw him first, through the sliver between the curtains. The hunchback didn't knock, didn't ask, didn't cry. He just crouched by the wall and sat in the mud, curling his long arms around himself. Inside, Muriel was humming. She had just finished knitting something soft, another scarf in purple wool, her favorite. Eustace, as always, grumbled behind a newspaper. And Courage paced. That little dog, always afraid of everything, was brave in his heart when it mattered most. He pawed at the door, letting out a soft, worried whimper. Muriel turned. "Oh, Courage, what is it now, dear?" He pawed again. She looked out, lifting the curtain, and gasped. "Oh, my." And so, dear listener, the storm sang above them. And something unexpected was about to bloom in nowhere. A tale not of monsters or mayhem, but of loneliness, kindness, and a friendship that would change Courage's heart forever. The Hunchback of Nowhere had arrived, and his story was only just beginning. The rain had not stopped. It whispered like a lullaby on the farmhouse windows, tapping and sliding, as though the night sky itself was shedding quiet tears. Inside, Muriel moved slowly, her slippers softly brushing the floor as she opened the door. There, in the doorway's golden glow, was the hunchback. He looked up, blinking against the light. Water dripped from his wide hat, his nose red from the cold. His long fingers curled around his knees. Muriel knelt slightly, kindness glowing in her soft eyes. "Oh, you poor dear, you're soaked through." Courage stood beside her, looking up at the hunched man. There was no fear in his eyes now, only curiosity, and something warmer. Empathy. Muriel didn't hesitate. "Come now, let's get you warm. You can't stay out in this storm." The hunchback hesitated. He had never been welcomed anywhere. His body shifted, unsure, as though expecting her to change her mind. But Muriel only smiled. And Courage, wagging his tail softly, gently tugged the stranger's sleeve with his teeth, inviting him inside. Step by step, the hunchback entered the farmhouse. Not like a ghost or a shadow, but like someone quietly waking up from a long dream of being forgotten. Inside, Muriel wrapped him in one of her handmade quilts, soft, faded, and smelling faintly of lavender and old stories. She placed a steaming bowl of vegetable soup in front of him. No words were spoken at first, only the sound of the fireplace crackling, the slow clink of spoon on bowl, and the ticking of the old cuckoo clock above. Courage sat close, watching the hunchback with those round, kind eyes. The hunchback glanced down, and then did something rare for him. He smiled, just slightly, a small, crooked smile that had been lost in the folds of his face for far too long. Eustace shuffled into the room. He looked at the stranger and grunted, "Bah! Who let the umbrella in?" Muriel turned quickly. "Hush now, Eustace. He's our guest." Eustace muttered something about freeloaders and returned to his paper. But the hunchback didn't mind. He had been called worse, ignored worse. Tonight, he was warm, he was fed, he was seen. That night, Courage led the hunchback to the barn where he could sleep. Courage fluffed up the hay with his paws, made a pillow from an old potato sack, and even dragged in a small lamp for a bit of light. The hunchback looked around, eyes wide. It was the most comfort he'd had in who knows how long. And before drifting to sleep, he whispered something so soft, Courage almost didn't hear. "Thank you, little dog." Courage tilted his head and gave a sleepy smile, curling at the foot of the straw bed. Outside, the storm softened, as if the sky itself was sighing in relief. The morning came gently, not with a blinding sunrise, but with soft silver light spilling across the dusty fields of nowhere. The rain had passed, leaving behind fresh air, damp earth, and the quiet, shimmering stillness that only follows a long, peaceful storm. Inside the barn, the hunchback slowly opened his eyes. For a moment, he forgot where he was. He expected the cold, the concrete alleys, the wind pressing through the cracks of old buildings, but instead, he felt warmth and the soft sound of a dog snoring gently at his feet. Courage stirred, blinking up at the hunchback. He yawned a tiny yawn, stretching out his little legs like he was waking from the coziest dream. The hunchback sat up, running his long, crooked fingers through his wild, straw-colored hair. He looked down at Courage. "You stayed," he said quietly. Courage just gave a sleepy nod. Of course he stayed. That's what friends do. Back inside the farmhouse, Muriel was already up. The kitchen smelled of oat porridge, cinnamon, and toasted bread. She hummed a lullaby from her childhood, stirring the pot with rhythm and love. When the hunchback entered, she smiled wide. "Good morning, dear. Did you sleep well?" He nodded slowly. Muriel placed a warm bowl in front of him, with just a dollop of honey and a sprinkle of raisins. Courage hopped into his usual seat near the window, ears twitching to the chirp of newly dried birds outside. As the day passed, the hunchback helped around the farm. He fixed a broken hinge on the barn door, gathered eggs from the coop with surprisingly gentle hands, and even repaired a sagging fence with only a bit of rope and a clever knot. He didn't speak much, but his actions spoke volumes. Muriel praised him again and again. "You've a good heart," she'd say, to which he'd always lower his gaze, not used to such words. That evening, as twilight painted the sky in strokes of violet and rose, the hunchback sat on the porch with a Courage by his side. A soft breeze moved through the tall grass, whispering secrets. The hunchback turned to Courage and began to speak, not with sadness, but with memory. "I wasn't always alone," he said. Courage looked up. "I used to live in a town, far from here. I played the bells in a tower. People would hear them and smile, even if they didn't know it was me making them sing." He paused. "But one day, the tower closed. The people forgot, and I disappeared with it." Courage's ears drooped. He gently nuzzled the hunchback's hand. And for the first time, the hunchback didn't pull away. He let the dog comfort him. Because in that moment, he understood something precious. It didn't matter how the world had forgotten him. Right now, he was remembered. Right now, he was here. The stars peeked out one by one, and the farmhouse behind them glowed like a lantern in the dusk. Inside, Muriel played her accordion softly, the tune rising like a lullaby into the darkening sky. Eustace, still grumbling as always, dozed off in his chair, his hat slipping over his eyes. And outside, under a blanket of stars and stitched-together silence, the hunchback and the dog sat, side by side, as if they had always known each other. The fourth night in Nowhere began like a whisper. A hush settled over the land like the world had paused to take a breath. The sky was velvet black, sprinkled with starlight, and a soft wind swayed the cornfields in gentle, sleepy waves. Inside the farmhouse, the hunchback sat at the old kitchen table. He was carving something from a piece of wood Muriel had given him, quiet, focused, his hands steady and precise. Courage watched curiously from a stool nearby, his head resting on the table, ears flopping forward. The carving was a bell tower, small, simple, but beautifully detailed, like a memory being built again piece by piece. Muriel smiled warmly, her knitting needles clacking gently nearby. "You're very talented, dear. That's just lovely." The hunchback nodded, almost bashfully. Then a shadow stretched over the table. Eustace had entered the room. He stared at the carving, then at the hunchback, and frowned. "You making toys now? What are you, 5? Muriel shot him a glance. "Oh, Eustace, stop it. He's not bothering anyone." But Eustace wasn't done. "Strangers coming in, sitting at my table, eating my food, carving their little nonsense." The hunchback looked down, folding the carving gently in his hands. He didn't speak. He didn't argue. He was used to this kind of treatment. Courage growled softly, more of a hum than a snarl, but stood between them. Eustace scowled. "Bah! Useless dog and useless hunchback." The words hung in the air like thorns. Muriel stood now. Her voice was still soft, but there was steel in it. "Eustace Bagg, that is enough. He's done more kindness in a day than you've done in years." Eustace grumbled and stormed off, dragging his newspaper behind him like a cape of irritation. Silence returned, but it was heavier now, like a storm building beneath the floorboards. The hunchback stood slowly. He placed the half-finished carving on the table and turned toward the door. Courage jumped up, tail wagging nervously, eyes pleading. But the hunchback smiled gently. "It's all right, little one. I understand. I shouldn't overstay." Muriel put a hand on his shoulder. Her eyes glistened. "You stay as long as you like, dear. This is your home, too, if you want it to be." The hunchback looked around at the little kitchen, at the flickering light, at Courage, his small friend with a big heart. And he sat back down. Not because he wanted to impose, but because, for once, someone wanted him there. Later that night, after the farmhouse had fallen asleep, Eustace sat in his chair, brooding in the dim glow of the TV. He didn't understand. Why did that strange man make him feel unseen? Why did his presence feel like a mirror Eustace didn't want to look into? He muttered, "Don't need no one else in this house, not even that mutt." But he said it quieter than before. Maybe, just maybe, something was stirring in Eustace too. Something uncomfortable. Something like shame. Meanwhile, Courage and the hunchback lay beneath the stars again, this time with the small wooden bell tower placed beside them in the grass. It caught the moonlight and looked almost real. The hunchback whispered, "You're a good dog, Courage." Courage leaned against him, letting out a long, slow breath. The kind of breath you only take when you feel safe. The morning sun rose quietly. No grand fanfare, no golden blaze, just a sleepy stretch of pale yellow across the horizon, painting the farmhouse in soft honey light. Courage blinked his eyes open, nestled beneath a quilt in the barn beside the hunchback. Outside, birds chirped like tiny flutes, their songs weaving through beams of light as if they too were part of the story. The hunchback was already awake. He sat cross-legged in the hay, gazing at the small wooden carving beside him, the little bell tower. Finished now. He held it with both hands, not just a carving, not just wood, but a piece of his past, and maybe a piece of who he was trying to become again. Later, back at the farmhouse, Muriel was preparing her famous tea, a blend of rose petals, cinnamon, and just a pinch of mint-like. A warm hug in a teacup. She poured 3 cups. "Eustace," she called gently, "come have some tea with us." Grumbling echoed from behind the newspaper. The hunchback sat at the table, carefully setting the wooden tower in the center like a centerpiece of memory. Muriel admired it. "It's beautiful. You should keep carving, dear. You've got the hands of an artist." The hunchback blushed under his wide-brimmed hat. Courage smiled too, tail sweeping gently across the floor like a quiet broom. And then Eustace appeared. Slowly, stiffly, he sat and didn't say anything. Didn't look at the hunchback, just reached for the tea, muttered something like, "Smells weird," and took a sip. It was quiet for a long time. But not awkward, not cold, just gentle. Outside, wind chimes played in the breeze. Inside, the clock ticked in slow, sleepy beats. And Courage curled beneath the table, resting his head on the hunchback's shoe. That afternoon, Courage had an idea. He led the hunchback behind the barn, where an old iron hook stuck out from a crooked post. Something used to hang there, long ago. Something that used to ring. The hunchback tilted his head. He understood. From inside his coat, he pulled out a small metal bell, tarnished. That evening, Muriel served dinner under the porch lights. Courage, the hunchback, and even Eustace sat around the table. No arguments, no insults, just slow chewing, soft conversation, and a sense of something shifting like walls melting under candlelight. Muriel raised her cup. "To kindness," she said with a smile. Courage barked once, and the hunchback smiled wide. For the first time since arriving in Nowhere, he laughed. Not loudly, just a breath of joy. But enough for Courage to wag his tail all the way to the moon. The final morning began with golden clouds. They hovered low in the sky like pillows carrying the dreams of the night before. Soft rays of sunlight tiptoed through the windows, warming the farmhouse with a hush only morning peace can bring. Courage woke with a yawn, stretching his little limbs beneath the rocking chair where the hunchback had fallen asleep reading an old storybook Muriel gave him. The book was about a traveler, lost and lonely, who finds a home in the most unexpected place. Fitting. Very fitting. Later in the kitchen, the smell of apple cinnamon pie floated in the air. Muriel was humming again, the same tune she hummed the day the hunchback arrived. Courage sat on the stool beside her. The hunchback helped stir the filling. Eustace passed through, not saying much, only offered a grunt that somehow didn't sound angry anymore. That afternoon, the hunchback stood near the edge of the cornfield, his coat fluttering gently in the breeze. He looked toward the horizon, and Courage knew. He was thinking about leaving. Not because he wasn't welcome, but because something inside him felt ready. He'd arrived in rain, hunched in sorrow and silence. Now the sky was clear, and inside him, a bell had rung again. Muriel joined them in the yard and wiping flour from her hands. "You're thinking about going, aren't you?" The hunchback didn't answer right away. Then softly he nodded. "Yes, I think it's time." Muriel's eyes shimmered, but she smiled. "You'll always have a place here, dear. If ever the world gets too loud or too lonely again, come back to nowhere." He smiled, full and soft. "I will." Before leaving, the hunchback placed the wooden bell tower into Courage's paws. It was smooth, polished, carved with love. "For you, little one," he said. "A reminder that even when things seemed scary, you were never really alone." Courage blinked, eyes wide, holding the gift like it was made of stardust. Then he jumped into the hunchback's arms, tail wagging, nose nuzzling his cheek. As the sun began to dip, Courage, Muriel, and yes, even Eustace, stood near the dusty road leading out of nowhere. The hunchback turned one last time. He gave a small bow. Muriel waved with her apron. Eustace just tipped his hat, and Courage barked once. Soft, grateful, goodbye. The hunchback walked into the sunset, his shadow long and steady, his steps no longer hunched, his heart no longer heavy. And somewhere far in the distance, a bell rang, clear, gentle, full of kindness. And so ends our fourth tale of tonight. Now, let's begin our fifth tale of tonight. One that begins with a simple ache, but grows into something stranger and sleepier than anything Courage could have ever imagined. The wind in nowhere was quiet that evening. A cool, gentle breeze slipped through the tall grass, carrying the scent of baked earth, sunflowers, and faint, sweet dust. Inside the farmhouse, Courage lay on his belly near the fireplace, chewing softly on a plush slipper. Not his slipper, Eustace's. But Courage liked the way it felt. A little squishy, a little warm, a little chewy. Like a bedtime snack for the soul. Muriel sat in her favorite chair, knitting a new wool hat, this one in sky blue. The cuckoo clock above ticked in slow, dreamy rhythm. Outside, the world hummed in soft tones, as if the night itself was rocking in a cradle. But then, Courage's eyes blinked. He paused, and then he winced. A strange pressure pulsed in his jaw, just a small, dull throb behind his teeth. He pawed at his mouth, then chewed again. Winced harder. Muriel looked over. "Courage, you all right, dear?" Courage smiled through the gritted teeth, tail wagging nervously. Then he bit down again. Throb. His eyes bulged. A low moan came from his throat. He tried to pretend nothing was wrong. But Muriel noticed. She leaned forward and tilted his little head. "Oh, my. That doesn't look right at all. One of your teeth is puffed up like a marshmallow." Courage whimpered. Eustace peeked over his newspaper. Toothache. Bah. Rip it out with pliers like in the good old days." Muriel frowned. "We'll take him to the dentist tomorrow." Courage's ears dropped. He didn't know much about dentists, but he knew this. They weren't good. That night, Courage couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in his little dog bed. The ache throbbed in gentle waves, as if his tooth had learned how to whisper. But the worst part wasn't the pain. It was the dreams. Dreams of drills that buzzed like angry bees. Dreams of giant teeth chasing him through hallways of floss. Dreams of shadowy figures with bright silver tools and no eyes. He sat up in bed, heart pounding. But when he looked out the window, he saw something strange in the distance. A small, glowing light, far out in the desert, blinking, slowly, rhythmically. Like a beacon, the wind shifted. And somewhere far away, a faint laugh echoed in the air. Sharp, metallic. Courage gulped and pulled the covers over his head. Tomorrow was going to be unusual. Morning arrived, but it didn't feel like morning. The light outside was hazy, pale, and unsure of itself. The air felt still, like the wind was holding its breath. Courage stirred beneath his blanket, groaning as the dull ache in his tooth returned, heavier now, like a small drum beating inside his cheek. He padded into the kitchen where Muriel had made his favorite, warm oatmeal with honey and soft banana slices. But Courage could only poke at it with his paw. Even the thought of chewing made his jaw wince. Muriel crouched beside him and stroked his head gently. There, Courage. We'll go see the dentist. He'll fix you right up." Eustace, still reading the paper, muttered from behind it. "Bah! Dentists. Crooks with masks and drills. Had one try to steal my gold tooth once." Muriel rolled her eyes. "You don't have a gold tooth, Eustace," he huffed. "Exactly." Muriel pulled out a small, faded card from the drawer. "The nearest one is still that old place out past the crooked cactus. Dr. Gerbil's Dental Den." Courage froze. That name. It buzzed like static in his mind. Dr. Gerbil. He didn't know why, but just hearing it made his fur stand up. They set off in the truck, bouncing gently along the long dirt road. The sky was turning a strange color, neither blue nor gray, but something in between, like a forgotten memory. As they drove deeper into the desert, Courage sat up, peeking nervously through the window. He saw things in the distance. Shapes. Not buildings, but bones. Tall, twisted spires of what looked like oversized molars poking up from the sand. Giant teeth half buried like fossils. He whimpered. Muriel patted his head. "It'll be all right, dear." But the road grew stranger the farther they went. And then they saw it. A crooked little building, leaning like it was whispering something to the wind. A big tooth-shaped sign creaked above the front door. Dr. Gerbil's Dental Den, where smiles scream bright. Courage's eyes widened. His ears drooped. He didn't like this place. Not one bit. The windows were cracked like spider webs. The wind made the bell above the door tinkle a little too long. Muriel opened the door cheerfully. "Come along, Courage." Courage followed, slowly, paws dragging. As he stepped inside, a strange scent filled his nose. Not minty fresh like you'd expect, but metallic and slightly burnt. Inside, the walls were lined with photos of smiling patients, except none of them had eyes, just toothy grins stretching a little too wide. A little bell dinged, and then a voice slithered from the back hallway. Welcome. Welcome to the den." Out came a small figure in a white lab coat far too big for him. Dr. Gerbil. Round ears, a tiny snout, large round glasses that made his eyes seem endless. He grinned with a sharp, pointy smile. Well, well, well. A little canine with a cavity, hmm? Courage's knees wobbled. Dr. Gerbil turned. Come, to the chair. Courage didn't move. Muriel gently nudged him forward. "He's very nervous." "Oh, don't worry," Dr. Gerbil whispered, with an unnatural giggle. "Most of my patients are." He gestured down the hallway where the walls pulsed faintly like gums. And from the back, Courage heard it. A low buzzing, like bees. No, drills. Courage stepped down the hall like a dog walking into a dream he didn't want to be in. The floor beneath him was soft, not carpet, not tile, something squishy, like walking on an old sponge that whispered with every step. The walls were pink, not painted pink, gum pink, and they pulsed, like they were breathing. Courage's fur stood on end. Ahead, under a flickering light, sat a towering dentist's chair. It was made of chrome and straps and soft padding that looked a little too worn down. A tray of shiny tools sat beside it. Mirrors, hooks, drills. One tool looked like a whisk, another like a corkscrew. And beside the chair, Dr. Gerbil. He gestured grandly. "Please, Mr. Courage, take a seat. Let's have a little peek." Courage froze. But Muriel's gentle voice echoed from the hallway. "You're doing great, dear. I'm right here." So Courage climbed up. The chair hissed. Straps clicked. Too fast. Courage looked down. His paws were now held in place by soft leather belts. He tugged gently. They didn't budge. Dr. Gerbil adjusted his glasses. The lenses flashed. Open wide. Courage clenched his teeth. Dr. Gerbil's smile widened, just a bit too far. "Oh, come now," he whispered. "I only want to see what's inside." He reached into his coat and pulled out a tool with spinning mirrors. It made a high-pitched whir like the whimper of a tea kettle. Courage winced. Dr. Gerbil peered into his mouth, letting out a long hum. Yes, I see. A most peculiar molar." Courage raised an eyebrow. Dr. Gerbil tapped it with a long, cold stick. Twang! The pain shot through Courage's face and into the ceiling. Dr. Gerbil cackled. Just as I thought. The tooth of fear." Courage's eyes widened. "The tooth of fear," Gerbil whispered, circling the chair, "is a very rare tooth, found only in cowardly dogs, and it must be removed. Very, very carefully." The drill buzzed to life. High, shrill, whining. Dr. Gerbil leaned in, nose almost touching Courage's. "You'll feel a tiny pinch." Courage screamed, silently, dramatically, arms flailing in slow motion. But the straps held. The lights above the chair flickered. And then? Courage did what he always does when the world gets too weird. He panicked completely. His mind burst into imagination. He was in a rocket ship flying away from the tooth, then trapped in a tooth-shaped prison, then a game show where his teeth were the prize. Meanwhile, in the real world, he wiggled, wobbled, and twisted until... Pop! The chair spun. The drill shot off like a rocket, and Dr. Gerbil flew into the air, flipping backwards, landing in his own tool cabinet with a clang. Courage sat up, the straps now loose. He rubbed his mouth. The pain was gone. Gone? He blinked, felt around. The tooth had fallen out on its own. Dr. Gerbil groaned from the floor, tangled in floss. "Rude little creature," he hissed. "That was my tooth to claim." But Muriel entered the room just then, holding Courage's leash. "All done?" Courage leapt into her arms. She smiled. "You were so brave, dear." Courage gave a woozy smile, then fainted gently in her arms. Outside, the wind picked up. They left the dental den behind, and as they drove off, Courage looked out the window. He thought he saw Dr. Gerbil in the doorway, waving a toothbrush like a wand. But maybe that was just the pain talking. The desert wind sang a lullaby as Muriel's old pickup truck rattled back toward the farmhouse. The sun was low in the sky now, casting long shadows across the fields of nowhere. Each fence post, each weed, each lonely bird flying home was stretched across the land like painted lines on a sleepy canvas. Courage sat quietly on the passenger seat, a little woozy, a little numb, and very, very glad to be far away from Dr. Gerbil's dental den. Muriel hummed a soft tune, an old bedtime lullaby from her childhood in the Highlands, the kind that made you forget about drills and scary dentists and tooth-shaped prisons. That night, back in the farmhouse, Muriel made a warm mug of chamomile tea for herself, and a bowl of soft mashed potatoes for Courage, no chewing required. She tucked him into his little bed beside the fireplace, covered him with a blanket made of old scarves, and placed a tiny silver coin under his pillow. "For the tooth fairy," she whispered with a smile. Courage blinked slowly. His eyelids were heavy like velvet curtains. He nuzzled into his blanket. And then the dreams returned. But these dreams were different. Not of drills or dental tools, not of tight chairs and whispering walls. These dreams floated. Courage found himself in a vast, star-filled sky. He was standing on a cloud made of cotton candy, watching as thousands of tiny, sparkling creatures flew past him with wings of glass and light. Tooth fairies. Each one carried a tiny glowing molar, whispering blessings as they passed. Bravery for pain, rest for fear, peace for courage. They didn't buzz or shout or sparkle too brightly. They floated, moved like dandelion seeds in moonlight. One of them landed softly on Courage's nose. She wore a crown of silver floss and carried a pouch of shining coins. She smiled kindly. "Thank you for being so brave," she whispered. "We take more than teeth, you know. We take the fear, too, and leave behind dreams instead." Courage looked surprised. The fairy giggled and tapped his forehead. And suddenly, he wasn't scared anymore. Just, quiet, still, safe. Back in the farmhouse, a breeze swept through the curtains. The little coin under Courage's pillow shimmered for a moment and then vanished in a soft burst of glitter. Eustace, snoring loudly in his chair, didn't notice. Muriel rocked slowly beside the fire, her knitting needles paused as though even they were dreaming. The moon rose high above nowhere and all was calm. The farmhouse slept deeply that night. Even the wind was silent, as though the whole world had pulled up a blanket of stars and decided not to stir. Courage dreamed. But this time, it wasn't of flying or fairies or buzzing sounds. It was of something simpler. He was back in the kitchen. The walls were gently lit by golden sunlight. Muriel stood at the stove, humming softly. Eustace sat at the table, tapping his foot to no rhythm at all. And Courage was smiling. No pain, no worry, just warmth. He woke slowly, blinking into the soft amber light of early morning. The fire had gone low, crackling softly like sleepy breathing. He stretched, yawned, then winced, only slightly. The ache in his mouth was fading. He reached under his pillow with a paw and found nothing, except a faint shimmer of glitter. In the bathroom, Courage hopped onto the little wooden stool. He leaned in toward the mirror. His reflection stared back. Round pink face, big eyes, and a gap, where the throbbing tooth had once been. He opened wide and gave a little test smile. It felt, okay. A little weird, but okay. He tilted his head and made a few silly faces, one with his tongue out, another with his ears flopped forward. Then he stopped, because for a moment, he saw something in the mirror. Behind him, standing in the hallway, Dr. Gerbil, just watching. Courage spun around. Nothing there. The hallway was empty. Still, only the quiet tick of the wall clock echoed in the background. He looked back at the mirror. Only his reflection. Just Courage. But he shivered anyway. Later that day, Muriel noticed Courage's unease. She sat beside him on the porch with a warm blanket and rubbed his back gently. "Sometimes," she said, "when we go through something scary, a piece of it stays with us for a while." She sipped her tea. "But you're safe now. And sometimes, the best way to make fear go away," she leaned close, smiling, "is to smile right back at it." Courage looked at her, then looked down at the small mirror she held up. He stared at his own face, big eyes, slight gap, tiny grin. He smiled again. This time it felt real, like the kind of smile that chases shadows out of corners. That night he drew something in the dust on the floor, a silly cartoon tooth with little feet and a giant, goofy smile. He and Muriel laughed about it all evening. Even Eustace cracked half a grin when he saw it, though he quickly covered it with his hat. And for the first time in a long time, Courage didn't feel afraid of what the mirror might show, because now, when he looked, he saw someone braver than he remembered. Morning again. The sky over nowhere was a calm blue, scattered with slow drifting clouds shaped like soft pillows and tiny molars. The fields whispered with wind, not a restless wind, but the kind that carries old laughter and the scent of toast. Inside the farmhouse, everything was simple again. Muriel in the kitchen, humming gently. Eustace asleep in his chair, newspaper over his face, snoring like a distant tractor. And Courage. He sat on the porch looking out at the empty road. He clutched a tiny box in his paw, a small wooden tooth box. Muriel had carved it just for him. Inside, a single silver coin and a folded note. "To the bravest little dog in nowhere. May your smiles always be fearless. The Tooth Fairy." He held it close to his chest, a reminder that even fear can leave behind treasure. That afternoon, Courage walked around the house, checking every mirror. No Dr. Gerbil, no shadowy figures, just his reflection. Sometimes goofy, sometimes sleepy, but always smiling. He passed the hallway where Muriel had hung a new drawing on the wall. Courage wearing a dentist's coat, holding a toothbrush like a sword. Underneath she had written, "Defender of the Teeth." Later, as the sun dipped behind the horizon and painted the sky in lavender and gold, Courage helped Muriel water the garden. She handed him a small shovel and whispered, "Dig right here." He did. They buried the little tooth box beneath a sunflower. "Good memories should grow," she said with a smile. And from then on, every time that sunflower bloomed, Courage would sit beside it, remembering the time he faced his fear, and won. Not with fighting, not with running, but by smiling. That night before bed, Courage crawled into his blanket nest. The moonlight spilled across the floor like melted milk. He looked out the window. No dental den, no drills, no fear, just stars. And the faint sound of Muriel's lullaby echoing down the hallway. He curled up, tail tucked, eyes half closed, breathing slow. And as the wind carried dreams across the desert once more, Courage, the cowardly dog, drifted off to sleep with the tiniest, softest, bravest smile. Now, let's begin our sixth tale of tonight. One that curls through the corners of the mind like a whisper in a barber shop. Snip, snip, snip. It was a cloudy afternoon in nowhere. The wind carried a chill through the wheat fields, and the sky above the farmhouse wore a coat of gray wool. Inside, the fireplace crackled, and Courage, the cowardly dog, was curled into his blanket, half asleep beside Muriel's rocking chair. She was knitting something new, green, soft, and oddly shaped. Eustace grumbled in his usual chair, feet up, hat down, muttering about taxes and ghosts. Then the mail arrived. Just one envelope. Long, pale, smelling faintly of mint. Muriel opened it with her knitting needle and gasped softly. "Oh, it's from my dear nephew, Fred." Courage's ears perked up. He didn't know much about Fred. Muriel didn't talk about him often, only said he was a little different, but terribly polite. She smiled. "He's coming to visit. Oh, how lovely. I'll need to make extra pudding." Courage wasn't so sure. Something about the name, Fred, gave him goosebumps on his tail. That evening, the wind picked up. A soft knock echoed at the door. Tap, tap, tap. Muriel opened it with joy, and there he stood, Fred. Tall, pale, a long green coat buttoned all the way up, big green eyes, a soft, calm smile that didn't quite match the wind, and hair. Very little hair. "Hello, Annie," he said with a slow, airy voice. "I do hope I'm not a bother." Muriel beamed. "Oh, not at all, dearie. Come in, come in." Fred stepped inside like a ghost wearing shoes. Courage peeked from behind the couch. Fred looked down at him. Their eyes met. Courage froze. Fred smiled. "Ah, a dog," he whispered. "I do, love dogs." Muriel made tea and pudding. Fred didn't eat much. He mostly sat, very still, watching Courage. And then, very softly, he began to rhyme. "Hello, new friend. So pink and neat. I find you calm. I find you sweet. But once I feel the urge arise, I dream of snips and snips and sighs." Courage gulped. Muriel yawned. "Time for bed, I think." Fred smiled. "I'd like a room with a lock, if you please." Muriel gave him the guest room upstairs. She said to Courage, "Don't worry, dear. He's just a little poetic. Always been that way." Courage nodded slowly. But inside, he felt a familiar shiver, like the one you feel when scissors are too close to your ears. That night, Courage curled up under Muriel's bed. But he couldn't sleep. Above him, floorboards creaked. Soft steps. Slow. And then, a whisper through the vent. "Naughty." The farmhouse sighed in its sleep. Wind tapped on the windows like curious fingers, and the clock ticked like a metronome set to the rhythm of slow breathing. Courage lay curled at the foot of Muriel's bed, his ears twitching at every creak. Upstairs, Fred's room was quiet, too quiet. Even the wind avoided that door. But then, a sound, soft, deliberate. Click. The door upstairs unlocked. Courage's eyes flew open. He tiptoed through the hallway, up the creaky stairs, every step like a heartbeat. He reached the guest room door. Slightly open. Just a sliver. And from inside came a whispering voice. Not mean, not loud, just gentle and strange. Locked away, my secret stays until the urge comes out to play. Courage peeked inside. Fred stood in front of the mirror, brushing what little hair he had left. His green coat was off. His boots were lined perfectly at the bed's edge. He held a pair of scissors in one hand. They gleamed. Fred turned slowly. Saw Courage's face in the door crack. Smile. You're quite the pup, with silky fur, and when I look, I feel a stir. The urge returns. It starts to grow, to snip and snip and snip, you know. Courage squeaked. The door swung open with a soft creak. Fred stepped toward him. A naughty pup, but neat and trim. Shall I begin? With tail or chin? Courage bolted down the stairs, around the kitchen, into the closet. Slam! He locked the door behind him, paws shaking. His breathing was fast, but the world outside was slow. So very slow. He could hear Fred humming outside the door. The scissors clicked. Once, twice, then silence. Inside the closet, Courage found an old pair of shears, rusted and dusty, a can of hairspray, a box labeled, "Muriel's Perms Do Not Touch." He crouched behind the coats, shaking softly. Then, a letter fluttered out of Fred's green coat pocket, which Courage had somehow grabbed in the rush. It was unopened. Addressed to the Nowhere Mental Institution. Courage opened it. It read, "Dear Dr. Lila, I am doing much better now. The urges are fewer, though I still rhyme sometimes when I feel them. I hope I can visit my aunt soon. I do miss her. And I do miss trimming things. But I will be good, I promise. Signed, Fred." Courage's ears lowered. Fred wasn't evil. Just unwell. And somewhere inside him, maybe even lonely. Still, Courage didn't want to be trimmed. He peeked through the closet keyhole. Fred was gone. Suddenly snip. The scissors were at the keyhole. Fred's eye blinked into view. Little dog, so shy and neat. I wonder if your fur tastes sweet. Courage screamed silently. Then the scissors retracted, and Fred walked away, whispering, "Tomorrow then, or maybe late. We'll snip when stars illuminate." The wind outside howled gently. The farmhouse exhaled, and Courage stayed in the closet until the moon dipped below the edge of the desert. The morning sun tried to warm the house, but the farmhouse felt colder. Like something unspoken had crawled between the walls and gone still. Muriel sang quietly in the kitchen, unaware of the night's whispers. Eustace was outside, banging a rusty pipe against a wheelbarrow. And Fred was brushing his teeth, slowly, methodically. Each stroke followed by a soft hum. He spat into the sink with a grin. Courage, meanwhile, hadn't slept. Not truly. He'd spent the night in the linen closet, hugging an old hairdryer like a safety blanket. Now Courage watched Fred from behind the living room curtain. Fred sat in Muriel's chair, reading a book titled Hairstyles Through History. Every now and then he'd scribble notes in the margins. Victorian sideburns, snippy delight. Mongolian braids, so very right. Dog fur trims, fluffy fright. Courage shivered. Then came the real worry. Muriel approached Fred with a gentle voice. "Would you like to give Courage a bath later? He gets so scruffy in the spring." Fred looked up slowly. His smile didn't grow, but his eyes did. "Oh, Annie, I'd love to give him a bath." That afternoon, Courage began building a plan. He couldn't leave Muriel behind. He couldn't face Scissors alone. But he could use the house. The farmhouse was strange, yes, but familiar. And in the floorboards, beneath the rug in the upstairs hallway, Courage knew something no one else did. There was a crawl space. Old, dusty, big enough to hide in. Lined with traps Eustace had long forgotten. While Fred trimmed the hedge outside with an eerie grin, Courage lifted the rug, pried open the board, and slid inside. Inside was a maze of wood and shadow. Old mousetraps, forgotten cans of hairspray, a mannequin head with a wig named Doris. Perfect. Courage set a trap using string, clippers, and a music box that played lullaby versions of Fred's own rhymes. He even sprinkled biscuit crumbs to lure Fred to the right plank. Then he waited. Later that evening, Fred came looking for Courage. "Dear little pup, you hide so well, but every scent I always smell." He sniffed the air, walked softly, scissors in hand. He followed the trail. He reached the rug, lifted it, peeked inside. "A secret hole? How very sly. Shall I come down? Oh, must I try?" He slid inside. And then snap! A bucket of molasses poured from above. A dozen hair curlers snapped around his ankles, and a spring-loaded hand mirror flashed in his face, blinding him. Fred stumbled back. "Oh, my! Oh, dear! How very rude! This trap, I say, was poorly glued." But Courage wasn't done. He clicked the final string. The music box started playing. "Snip, snip, snip, your fur I'll trim." Fred blinked, hypnotized. He began to follow the sound, completely entranced. Until, boink. He fell into a net made of dental floss and Muriel's knitting yarn. Courage tied it tight. Fred blinked, confused. "I say, young dog, that wasn't nice. You caught me once, but maybe twice." Courage pushed the trapdoor shut, locked it, and put a flower vase on top. He ran to Muriel and hugged her leg tightly. She looked down, puzzled. "Oh, did you have a nice bath?" Courage just nodded, trembling. Muriel smiled. "Good lad." Outside, Fred's rhymes faded into gentle mutters. "Trapped I am, though still I dream, of silky coats and shaved ice cream." The wind blew softly through nowhere, and Courage curled up in Muriel's lap. Finally, a bit at peace. Morning sunlight spilled into the farmhouse kitchen like melted honey. It was gentle, slow, and warm. Muriel hummed a waltz while stirring porridge, her slippered feet tapping lightly on the wooden floor. Eustace grumbled in his sleep. Even his snoring was slow today. And Courage? He was keeping guard. Still watching the hallway, still keeping an ear on the trap door, the one under the upstairs rug where Fred now rested, humming, rhyming, dreaming. Muriel finally opened the door. Fred blinked up at her through a curtain of yarn and floss. "Time to get up, dear," she said kindly, as though he were just late for breakfast. He didn't struggle, didn't shout. Oh, he only smiled faintly. "I had a dream, dear aunt, so fair, that I was floating, trimmed of care." Muriel helped him up, brushed molasses from his collar, handed him a slice of toast. An hour later, the Nowhere Mental Institution van pulled up outside. Two polite, gentle nurses stepped out, clipboard in hand. They were used to Fred. They called him by name. They called him Sweet Boy. He stepped inside without complaint. But before the doors closed, Fred turned to look at Courage one last time. His eyes were soft. His voice was gentle. "You showed me fear and planned with care. You trapped me well, with floss and flair. But little pup, I leave no spite, for naughty things can still be right." He smiled, and the doors closed with a soft hiss. The van disappeared down the dusty road, and Courage stood on the porch watching until it became a dot. Inside, Muriel placed Fred's letter on the fireplace mantel. She sighed. Poor Fred. Always meant well, just too much snipping in his heart. She ruffled Courage's ears. You were so brave, dear." Courage smiled, just a little. That afternoon, Courage found Fred's scissors on the porch. He stared at them for a long while. They didn't buzz or sparkle, just sat there, still, quiet. Courage picked them up gently and placed them in a drawer, locked it, then taped a note to the front. Only for tail trims, maybe. The sun began to set over nowhere. The wheat fields rustled with relief, and Courage felt the tension melt from his paws. In the farmhouse, the mirror upstairs had one last word. Naughty. Courage stuck a bandage over it, then went downstairs and curled up by the fire. The night ahead would be soft, still, and snip-free. Inside the Nowhere mental institution, the walls were padded, the lights soft and humming. It smelled faintly of mint gum and warm ink. Fred sat on his bed, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't bound. He wasn't chained, just resting. His hands folded calmly on his lap. His scissors had been taken, but in his mind they still lived. And in sleep Fred floated. He dreamed of wide fields made of hair, blonde grass, curly trees, skies with gentle buzzers flying in circles like sleepy bees. In this dream, Fred walked barefoot across a braided road. His coat flapped gently in the breeze, though there was no wind. He passed a fence made of combs, a stream made of shampoo, and then he saw a small pink figure ahead. A dog. Courage. But this Courage was smiling, peaceful, unbothered. Fred tilted his head. You visit me, or do I you? Do dreams run backward, skies turn blue? Courage didn't speak. He just trotted forward, wagging his tail gently. Fred followed. They reached a strange place, a circular garden. Instead of flowers, it was filled with fur clippings, neatly arranged into petals and spirals. In the center sat a single chair, the barber's chair. Fred approached it slowly. His hand twitched. Then a pair of floating scissors descended from the clouds above, but they didn't land in Fred's hand. They landed in Courage's. He took them and snipped a single strand of grass. Fred blinked. Courage offered the scissors to him. Fred hesitated, then took them, and instead of snipping, he dug a hole with the scissors, planted the strand, covered it with the soft dream dirt, watered it with a teardrop. From the dirt grew a bush, not a scary bush, not made of hair, but a flower, soft, simple, bright yellow. Fred stepped back and whispered, The urge, I fear, won't leave too fast, but maybe it doesn't have to last. Courage nodded, sat beside him, and together they watched the dream fade into light. Fred's eyes opened slowly. He was back in his room, still in the institution, still quiet. But something was lighter, like the clippers inside his heart had been oiled and tucked away. For now, in the farmhouse at that same moment, Courage stirred in his sleep and smiled, not because he was safe, but because Fred was dreaming in peace. Time passed quietly in Nowhere. Days slid by like syrup on warm toast. The sky brightened, the wind softened, and Courage, the cowardly but clever little dog, began to breathe more deeply again. One morning a letter arrived in a light green envelope. No stamp, just a wax seal in the shape of a tiny pair of scissors. Muriel opened it carefully, sitting beside her knitting basket. Inside was a poem, neat, precise, folded in half with ribbon. She read it aloud while Courage peeked from behind the teapot. Dear Auntie, kind and dog so brave, though once I tried a coat to shave, I'm learning now, with help and tea, that peace can grow inside of me. The urge still hums, yes, soft and slow, but doesn't shout like long ago. I trim my thoughts and prune my mind, and leave all snipping far behind. So thank you both for fear and grace. I've learned that love can change a place, and though I'm here, not near your rug, I send you both a distant hug. Still quite naughty, but doing fine. Fred. Muriel smiled warmly. She placed the letter on the fridge beside a drawing of a sunflower and a crayon sketch of Fred and Courage holding scissors together. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Courage wandered to the porch with a bowl of warm pudding. He sat quietly thinking about Fred. Not fearfully, not nervously, just gently. He looked out over the fields and imagined Fred walking through that dreamscape garden again. No scissors, just silence and soil. The stars blinked above nowhere, slow, patient. And as the wind curled over the wheat like a lullaby, Courage felt sleep tug at his eyes. Inside, Muriel folded a blanket. Eustace dozed off in the middle of a game show. And somewhere, in a calm white room with soft lighting, Fred dreamed. He stood in the garden, with scissors in one hand and a watering can in the other. He smiled at a pink dog sitting beside him. No rhymes, just peace. Let's begin our seventh tale of tonight. Of footsteps in the dust, a strange guest in the night, of pancakes, pink feet, and a creature out of place. This is the dreamy tale of Bigfoot and his quiet grace. It was one of those nights in nowhere, the kind where the wind yawned instead of howling. The stars blinked sleepily above the empty highway, and the desert stretched on forever in a blanket of hush. Inside the farmhouse, Courage was watching TV. A black and white nature documentary softly echoed across the room. And here we see the elusive Bigfoot in his natural habitat, rare, gentle, and deeply misunderstood. Courage tilted his head. Bigfoot? The name tickled his brain in a way he didn't understand yet. Just then, thump, a sound outside. Then another, thump, thump, heavy, slow, not threatening, but strange. Courage peeked out the window. Nothing, just shadows. Muriel was baking cornbread in the kitchen, humming a tune. Eustace was asleep in his chair as always. So Courage stepped outside, into the quiet, into the dark. And that's when he saw it, a giant footprint. Right in the garden, next to the squash. 4 toes, bare, deeply sunken into the soil. Courage's ears drooped. He followed the trail. The footprints led around the barn, past the water barrel, and into the old chicken coop. He tiptoed closer. And there, curled up under a tattered hay blanket, wearing fuzzy slippers that barely fit, was Bigfoot. Sleeping, soft snores, gentle breath, a book clutched in his oversized hand. How to Make Friends When You're Gigantic. Courage didn't scream. He just blinked. Bigfoot stirred, opened one eye, and whispered in a surprisingly small voice, "Hi." Courage waved nervously. Bigfoot sat up slowly. His hair was wild. His feet were huge. His eyes were kind. "I didn't mean to scare anyone," he said. "I just needed a place to nap and maybe a warm pancake." Courage tilted his head, then nodded. He reached out his paw. Bigfoot took it, gently, like holding a marshmallow. And so began a very unusual friendship. Later, back in the kitchen, Muriel served pancakes and tea without a second thought. Bigfoot ducked to fit through the door, smiled sheepishly, and said, "Your garden smells like comfort." Muriel replied, "You look like you need a nap and a good meal. Pancake?" Bigfoot's eyes filled with tears. Outside, the wind curled over the hills. And inside, a pink dog, a kind old woman, and a lonely creature with very big feet sat around a tiny table, just quietly sharing pancakes. The morning sun stretched over nowhere like warm butter. Golden and slow, it seeped through the clouds and landed gently on the farmhouse porch. Bigfoot was sitting there, sipping tea from Muriel's largest mixing bowl. His feet dangled off the edge like two fluffy rugs. Courage sat beside him, tail wagging slowly. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. But inside, Eustace had other plans. He grumbled as he shoved on his boots. "We're going out for breakfast," he muttered. Muriel smiled. "But I just made toast." "Phooey. I want pancakes with motor oil on them. And coffee like tar." She rolled her eyes gently. "Suit yourself." Eustace slammed the door, then opened it again. Stared at Bigfoot. Bigfoot waved. Eustace blinked, then muttered, "Hairy freak," and walked off. Muriel shook her head. "You two should have a nice outing," she said to Courage and Bigfoot. "Go with Eustace. He won't mind. Take the back seat. Stay quiet. Maybe get a milkshake." Courage didn't like the sound of it, but Bigfoot lit up. "I've never been to a diner," he said. Courage sighed and nodded. Soon they were bouncing down the dusty road in Eustace's rusted truck. Bigfoot had squished himself flat in the truck bed under a blanket. Courage held onto his ears. The sky rolled above them like blue velvet. They arrived at a place called Stanley's Diner Trap Supply. A flickering neon sign buzzed overhead. Inside, the air smelled like syrup, salt, and old peanut shells. Everything was chrome and vinyl and dust. Eustace took his usual seat at the counter. Courage and Bigfoot slid quietly into a corner booth. Well, Courage slid. Bigfoot squeezed. He bumped the ketchup. Then the light fixture. Then tried to sit still. He smiled nervously. Everyone stared. Stanley, the greasy-haired owner, blinked. "Well, I'll be... Is that a Bigfoot?" People turned in their seats. Murmurs, whispers. A cowboy dropped his fork. Bigfoot swallowed hard. Courage felt the fur on his back stand up. Then Stanley leaned in and smiled. "You sit right there, big guy. Breakfast's on me." The room relaxed. People nodded, smiled. One woman offered him a napkin. Another slid him a newspaper. Stanley brought a tray stacked high with pancakes, eggs, toast, and a single cherry on top. Bigfoot's eyes sparkled. "I feel seen," he whispered. But not everyone smiled. In the corner booth, two figures in trench coats and sunglasses lowered their menus. They watched Bigfoot closely. One whispered to the other, "You know what they say. There's a bounty on those feet." Outside, the wind began to rise. Inside, the syrup dripped slow, and Courage knew this quiet pancake morning was about to get strange. The diner buzzed with lazy conversation. Forks clinked against plates. Old songs hummed from the jukebox. The waitress refilled mugs of coffee like she was painting rain. Courage and Bigfoot sat quietly in their booths. Bigfoot had syrup on his chin, but his eyes were full of wonder. "This place," he whispered. "Feel like a dream I didn't know I missed." Meanwhile, at table 4 in the far corner, the two trenchcoat men whispered again. "Confirmed. Subject matches description. Extra large feet, overgrown hair, emotional eyes. Should fetch a good price from the circus registry. One slid a small net gun from his briefcase. The other pulled out a tranquilizer donut. They weren't just visitors. They were Bigfoot catchers. Courage, nibbling his toast, looked up. His ears twitched. He saw the two men. Saw the net. Saw the donut. He gasped silently. Bigfoot just licked syrup from his pancake tower, humming happily. Courage tried to stay calm. He tapped Bigfoot's arm, pointed to table 4. Bigfoot blinked. Friends? Courage shook his head, mouthed, run. But it was too late. The men stood up. Step away from the Sasquatch, kid. We got clearance from the Mythical Creature Relocation Bureau. He belongs in a cage, next to the Jersey Devil. Bigfoot's eyes widened. He stood up and bonked the ceiling lamp with his head. It sparked, and everyone in the diner turned. Stanley shouted, Hey, you don't talk to my customers like that. The waitress threw a plate of waffles like a frisbee. The cook grabbed his rolling pin. Courage leapt up and shouted in his own language barks, yips, whimpers, and the room exploded into chaos. One of the agents fired the net gunnet tangled in a bar stool. The other tossed the donut. It hit Eustace in the head. He didn't notice. Stanley flipped a table and slid pancakes across the floor like marbles. Bigfoot ducked under the window. Courage grabbed a butter tray and launched it like a slingshot. Splat. Direct hit. The trench coat men slipped, tumbled, and landed in a trash can full of grits. The room fell silent. Everyone stared. Bigfoot stood up, covered in syrup and napkins. One little kid in the corner clapped. That was awesome. Stanley wiped his hands and looked at the agents. No one messes with my regulars, he said. Even if they've only been here once. Courage and Bigfoot exchanged a look. A look that said, let's leave before things get hairy. They snuck out the back door, into the warm air, into safety. Back toward the truck. The sky stretched wide over nowhere. And Courage, Eddie felt proud. Not scared, not trembling, just brave, for his friend. The old pickup truck rumbled gently down the nowhere highway. The desert stretched beside it, dusty and drowsy, painted in oranges and soft pinks. In the back of the truck, Bigfoot sat with his knees to his chest, wrapped in a patchwork quilt Muriel had packed for him. A thermos of cocoa steamed beside him. Courage sat beside him, ears fluttering in the breeze. They didn't speak. They just watched the sky change color. After a while, Bigfoot looked down. I don't belong anywhere, do I? He said softly. Courage blinked, shook his head. Bigfoot chuckled. Even in a place called nowhere, I'm too strange. He stared at his hands. Too big for normal beds, too loud for quiet rooms, too hairy for polite company. Courage listened, gently. Then he climbed into Bigfoot's lap. He didn't speak. He just curled up like a comma on a page. The truck rolled past a sign that said, Old Pines Nature Preserve, last stop before the wilds. Courage's ears perked up. He tapped Bigfoot's shoulder, pointed. Bigfoot blinked. A nature preserve? He leaned closer to the sign as it passed. Shelter for rare animals, quiet, peaceful, protected. He whispered the words like a spell. Could I be rare instead of wrong? They turned off the highway, followed the winding road. Eustace didn't notice. He was too busy grumbling about gas prices and hairy freeloaders. Soon they reached the entrance. A small cabin. A sleepy ranger reading a book. Tall pine trees casting long leafy shadows. Birdsong floated in the air like lullabies. Bigfoot stepped out of the truck. The ranger looked up, calm as tea. Oh, he said. A big one. Bigfoot froze. The ranger stood up, smiled. You're safe here. if you want to be. Bigfoot's shoulders relaxed. His breath caught in his throat. I can stay? The ranger nodded. Long as you can. Bigfoot blinked hard, then whispered, That I can do. Courage wagged his tail. He hugged Bigfoot's foot tightly. They stood there for a long while, just listening to the trees sway. The ranger handed Bigfoot a key. This is for cabin 9. It's got tall ceilings and soft rugs. Bigfoot took it like it was made of stars. As night fell, they shared one last cup of cocoa on the cabin porch. Bigfoot smiled down at Courage. I think, I found a place. Courage smiled back, then yawned, snuggled against Bigfoot's knee. And the moon rose quietly over the pines, over nowhere, over the strange and the kind and the brave. The wind moved like a lullaby through the tall pine trees. It whispered gently across the forest floor, rustling the ferns and kissing the corners of cabin 9. Inside, everything was still. Bigfoot lay on a bed made just for him, a mattress of layered moss and soft patchwork quilts, pillows shaped like clouds, and a window that opened to the stars. Courage was curled up on a moon-patterned rug beside the bed, his little legs twitching as he dreamed. Bigfoot couldn't sleep just yet. Too many feelings floated in his chest, warm ones, sad ones, grateful ones. He stared out the window at the forest. Fireflies blinked like distant thoughts, and far in the distance, a gentle howl echoed. Not scary, not wild, just lonely. Bigfoot sat up. He stepped out onto the porch. The moon hung low above the treetops, like a silver lantern swaying on a slow breeze. He sat on the edge of the porch, legs swinging, and exhaled. I've run so long, he whispered to no one. I forgot what it felt like to stop. He looked down at his feet, bare, big, and fuzzy. Then, a sound behind him. Soft pause. Courage joined him, still half asleep, his eyes like glowing pebbles. He sat beside Bigfoot without a word. They listened. An owl hooted. A pine cone fell. The stars rearranged themselves ever so slightly. Bigfoot spoke again. Do you think the world will ever stop chasing me? Courage tilted his head, then shook it gently. But he placed a paw on Bigfoot's hand. A different answer. Not a lie. Not false hope. Just, I'll stay. Far in the trees, something stirred. A creature, taller than the pines. Long legs, woolly arms, gentle eyes. Another Bigfoot. He didn't approach. Just watched and nodded, then disappeared into the forest. Bigfoot gasped. Courage's eyes widened. There were others. Not many, but some. And this place, this sleepy corner of the earth, was calling them home. Back inside, Bigfoot lay down again. This time he felt different, unsettled. Like all the running had stopped. Like all the not belonging had melted. He closed his eyes. Courage nuzzled into the rug again. And the night folded around them like a blanket. The sky above nowhere blushed with soft oranges and sleepy pinks. Dew sparkled on every leaf. Birds chirped slowly, like they too had just woken from a comforting dream. Inside cabin 9, Courage yawned first, then stretched, then peeked out the window. Bigfoot was already outside, barefoot, smiling, and watching the forest breathe. He turned as Courage padded out. Did you sleep okay? He asked softly. Courage nodded. Bigfoot looked around. The trees, the quiet, the little chimney puffs rising from nearby cabins. His play, he whispered. It's not just safe, it fits. Courage tilted his head. Bigfoot crouched beside him and continued. I used to think I was a mistake, a walking warning sign. But maybe I was just waiting to arrive somewhere soft. He placed a hand gently over Courage's paw. You brought me here. Soon the truck arrived. Eustace honked twice, grumpily. Muriel waved from the passenger seat. Time to come home, dear, she called out. Bigfoot smiled at them, a warm, sleepy smile, then turned to Courage. Guess this is goodbye. Courage's ears drooped. He hugged Bigfoot's leg tightly. Bigfoot knelt down and whispered, I'll stay here, where I can finally be. But every time the wind moves or syrup hits a plate or feet thump softly across the porch, I'll think of you. He reached into the pocket of his flannel coat and handed Courage a tiny pine cone, tied with a string of yarn. A memory, a keepsake, a promise. As the truck rolled away, Courage looked back. Bigfoot waved once, then turned toward the forest, his steps slow and sure. Each footprint pressed into the earth, gentle but deep, like he belonged there, like he always had. Back at the farmhouse, Courage placed the pine cone gently on the shelf beside Muriel's teacups. He labeled it with a little sticky note, from a friend too big to forget. That night, the wind whispered over the fields again. It rustled the curtains. And if you listened closely, you could almost hear it hum. He found his place, thanks to a little dog who never gave up. Courage curled up on the rug, tail tucked, pine cone nearby. And the seventh tale of the night came to a soft, snuggly close. The tales are done. The monsters are gone. The night has grown deeper, and peace has taken its place. Let's gently drift now. Float deeper into the stillness. Courage sleeps near the fire, his breathing slow and soft. The farmhouse is still. Even the windmill barely turns. The stars overhead blink slowly, like nightlights for the universe. You're safe here. You're always safe here. No matter what the day was, no matter what thoughts tried to linger, they're not welcome now. Let them melt away. Let them slide from your shoulders, like a heavy coat you no longer need. You've made it through another story, another night, another moment to be proud of, even if all you did was rest. Sometimes rest is the bravest thing we can do. Now imagine, Courage curled up next to you, a warm blanket tucked under your chin, Muriel humming a lullaby from the rocking chair nearby, and Eustace snoring from the other room, grumbling about something funny in his dreams. This is your space now, this quiet, this calm, this night. Let's breathe together, in through your nose, hold, and out, slowly. Once more, in, hold, and out, slower. Now feel yourself sinking, not in fear, but in rest. Like Courage after a long, strange day, you've earned this peace. The fireplace is dimming now, a soft orange glow flickering like the heartbeat of the home. Outside, the wind whispers, but it carries no fear, just cool night air moving gently through wheat fields. The same fields Courage protects, and the same quiet you now share with him. You are safe, you are warm, you are enough. Still with me? Still drifting? Don't worry, you don't have to listen. You don't have to do anything. There is no next. Just this moment, just this rest, just this sleep. A shooting star moves across the nowhere sky. Muriel makes a wish. And maybe, just maybe, she wishes for your peace too. There's something magical in this silence, in this warmth, in knowing you're not alone. Courage, in all his small bravery, has shown us that you don't need to be fearless to be strong. You don't need to fight to be worthy. Sometimes being here, just being here, is enough. Can you feel your toes now, your fingers? Let them go. Let them loosen. Let them rest. The tension melting like ice on a warm windowsill. Every blink, longer than the last. Every breath, deeper. You're close now, closer than ever. Outside, the moon watches kindly. No judgment, only presence. Inside, the house barely moves. Even the dust is settled. Even the clock seemed to pause, to honor this quiet moment. Courage snores once, then wiggles in his sleep. He's dreaming of simpler things, butterflies, Muriel's cookies, the time he got to wear a detective hat. You're dreaming, too, or beginning to. And your dreams, they belong to you. They're safe here. The outro music fades even further. Now just ambient tones, low, soft frequencies that feel like velvet on the soul. Your thoughts are slower, not gone, just resting, floating on still water, drifting to the edges of your awareness. And now, your breath matches the rhythm of the windmill, turning slowly, steadily, softly. Nothing else to do now. No need to open your eyes. No need to move. If you hear this, you're not alone. You're just transitioning from wakefulness to dreams. You've already done everything you needed to do. Your journey today is complete. The night has held you, and SleepyToons has guided you. Now go, little dreamer. May your sleep be deep. May your dreams be light. And may your spirit be wrapped in the quiet courage of the little pink dog who faced fear and came home to peace.